Hello my dears, and welcome back to my corner of the internet. I'm Shannon, and today I'm going to be sharing with you my top 5 favorite books from 2017. Now, not all of these were published in 2017, though some were, but they're all ones that I read in 2017 and I absolutely loved. I'm going to be saving my favorite for the end, but the other 4, they're in no particular order. They're all great. When I was thinking about what books to add to this pile, it was easier than I thought it was going to be. There were a couple that I wished I could add as well, but when it came down to those top 5, it was pretty easy to narrow it down. Also, when we're done talking about these, I'm going to do a shout out, but I'm going to save that till the very end. So let's just jump right into it. The first book that I loved in 2017 was All My Puny Sorrows by Miriam Toews. I know I've talked about this book, not just in the one review I did for it, but in many other videos. This book honestly shook me to my core. It is so sad. Just to give you a little heads up, it's very sad. It's semi-autobiographical about the author. It's about 2 sisters, and they're very different, very, very different. And one has suffered her entire life from a very crippling depression, even though from the outside looking in, she seems to have it all. You know, she's beautiful. She has a husband who adores her. She has an amazing career as a, world-renowned pianist. And it seems like she has it all, but she's suffering and has suffered her entire life. So the book kind of gives you a bit of backstory about these sisters. And then when it's in the present date, it sort of shows you the one sister trying desperately to save the other sister's life. To try to give her a reason to keep going. To show her that, we can do this, you can do this. And it's a heartbreaking book from beginning to end. It's one of those books where you ugly cry at various points throughout, but it's such a beautiful, moving read. Miriam is an outstanding author. Her prose is so beautiful and so heartbreaking, and she's just an absolute joy to read. I cannot wait to read whatever she comes out with next. So that's All My Puny Sorrows. It's so good. And that was the one I at first thought I was going to save to the end as my favorite book of the year. And it went back and forth for a while between that one and the one that you will see at the end. This one, All My Puny Sorrows, is definitely listed among one of my favorite books of all time. So next up, by Roxane Gay, we have Difficult Women. Roxane Gay is an absolute treasure of a woman. She's so interesting. She's so well-spoken. Her writing is so amazing. Difficult Women is a collection of short stories. So it's hard to, sort of give you a play-by-play of the stories, but it's a collection of short stories about many different women from many walks of life. The title Difficult Women is not, meant in a derogatory sense, as you might think it is at first glance. But it's amazing. There are some stories in there that are very difficult to read, and if you've gone through different kinds of abuse in your life, it could be a little too much. But even so, it's a beautiful read. And the women in these books will break your heart and make you cheer. And they're wonderful, wonderful stories. So I definitely recommend that. If you love short stories are such an interesting art to me. When they're done well, they're amazing. And they're so difficult to write because you've got to pack a huge punch and tell a whole story in such a short amount of time. So when people are good at that, I'm always blown away. And Roxane Gay is great at that. Stephen King is the master of the short story. I find his short story collections are even better than his novels. They're just so good. And Joe Hill as well. He writes outstanding short fiction. Next up, we have The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This was an absolutely wonderful book. It's, you know, it's fairly thick, but it kept me compulsively reading it to the end. Again, this is about two sisters. I seem to be drawn to stories about sisters, probably because I have a sister, and that relationship, you know, the bond between sisters is one that's so interesting to me, and I love reading about it. So again, two sisters. This one takes place in France in World War II. Again, they are very, very different sisters, which is funny too, because me and my sister are very different. So these two sisters, they both kind of have different places in the war. One is a wife and a mother. Her husband has been sent off to fight, and she's left sort of trying to keep the family okay and together. You know, when food is becoming scarce and the children are scared, and Germans are coming into the town and they're needing places to stay, and they're taking the food and all the resources. So that's sort of her life. And then her sister's more of a rebel and wanting to be out there and doing something. So she's sort of on the opposite end. She's out there doing what she can with propaganda and things like that. And it's just very interesting the way the story unfolds. Again, it's an ugly crier, but what makes me cry at the end is actually something really beautiful and kind of happy. So it's not so depressing in that way, though there are some very sad parts throughout. But if you love historical fiction, reading about, you know, especially the period during World War II, you would love this, I think. Next up, this is by Emma Donoghue, and this is called The Wonder. This book is so interesting. It's such a fun story. Emma Donoghue, she wrote The Room. You might remember it was a book and then it was turned into a movie starring Brie Larson a few years ago. And so this story, The Wonder, is about, takes place in the past, not too far in the past. I'm thinking like the early 1900s, maybe late 1800s. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. But it's about a nurse who gets sent to this very small town in either England or Ireland, I think, because word has gotten around that there is a little girl who hasn't eaten in, I think it's about 2 weeks at the point when she goes to see her. And the little girl claims, and her family claims, that it's because God is keeping her alive. And so before she's declared a miracle, the town and the church want someone to come and sort of just witness her and make sure that everything's on the up and up. And so this nurse goes and she moves in with this, well, she lives at a like an inn nearby, but she spends her days with the little girl, and she kind of goes back and forth, breaking up her time. It's between her and a nurse. That way one of them can be there 24 hours a day. Not a nurse, her and a nun. She's the nurse, and then there's a nun. So you kind of have science and religion. They're both keeping an eye on her to find out if it's, like, what's going on. And the nurse, of course, is like, clearly somebody is helping her. Somebody's sneaking her food or whatever, you know. And so it's just the story of this nurse observing this girl and finding out what's going on. And for the longest time as you're reading, you know, you're like, what is going on? You keep changing your mind back and forth about what must be going on. And it's a great read. Emma Donoghue is a fantastic writer, and I would definitely recommend The Wonder. And now what I will say was my favorite book of 2017, and that just has really, really stuck with me ever since I read it. And it's by a woman named Zoe Whittall, and it's called The Best Kind of People. This book, you guys. Okay, so what it's about, if you didn't see when I originally did the book talk on it, is it's about a family. There's a wife slash mother, 2 children, a son and a daughter. The son's older, the daughter's younger. When the book picks up, the son's kind of already gone off to, you know, he's finished college, he's moved away. The daughter's still at home finishing high school. And what happens very early on in the book is the father slash husband of this family is very much out of the blue accused of sexual harassment, sexual misconduct with minors. Now this man, he is a teacher. He's a well-respected member of the school, of the community. He's been a teacher for years and years, and then all of a sudden these young girls come out and accuse him of being inappropriate with them. What I love about this book is that it's completely told from the other family member's point of view. It's never told from his point of view because in the context of this book, his point of view doesn't really matter. It's told mostly from his wife's point of view and from his children's point of view. And it's just a book that really hits you in the heartstrings. Like, if someone that you loved and trusted completely was accused of this out of the blue, how would you react? What would you do when all of a sudden you go from being a member of a family that is well respected and well loved to now all of a sudden, not only is your husband gone, he's been arrested, but you're a pariah in this town. Everyone looks at you like you're a monster because of what your husband has allegedly done. So the book is her coming to terms with what's going on and finding out what she believes to have happened. And it's a doozy of a ride. And when we get to the end, when we find out what really happened, we find out as she does. And then the quiet way that it ends with such a quiet, simple sentence. Just this moment that comes together and we learn something that happened and it just breaks your heart. But yet I feel like it's such a realistic thing that would happen. And that makes it even sadder. So if you love stories about families and, you know, their problems and the things that are going on, The Best Kind of People is outstanding. I cannot recommend it enough. If you read no other book that I've recommended, read this book. And if you do, I would love to hear your thoughts about it. Or if you've already read it, I'd love to hear what you thought about it. It's amazing. So there you go, you guys. Those are my top 5 books from 2017. And I wish I'd go on and tell you about more, but I feel like 5 is a good place, especially considering all the books that I'd be mentioning anyway. I've done book talks on, so you've heard me talk about them already. If the brief blurbs that I've said about any of these books pique your interest, I've done full book reviews on all of them. So you can go and check those out too if you're curious to know some more about the books. Before I go, I wanted to give a shout out to a relatively new friend of mine here on YouTube. Her channel name is 50 is the New Fabulous. Her name is Lisa. You need to check this woman out. Her channel, she is so funny, so clever. She does a lot of times like little skits and bits, and they're just, I find myself truly and genuinely laughing out loud. You will be absolutely charmed by her and her cameraman, and you really need to check her out. Not only is the content, you know, cute and funny, but also she has so much helpful information about being healthy, being fit, things like that. I learned so much from her videos, and I can't get enough. So I will link her channel down below. Please go and check her out, and when you do, you make sure you tell her I sent you. I will see you guys on Monday. Have a great weekend. Bye.